Hey guys, what is up? My name is Austin, and I am currently at an Apple store checking out the Apple Watch and new 12-inch MacBook, and so far my first impressions of the new MacBook are pretty meh. It has its positives, and it also has its negatives, so I thought the best way to take a look at the new MacBook would be to talk about those pros and cons. So without further ado, here are the pros and cons of Apple's new 12-inch MacBook. Alright, so taking a look at the pros here, one of the biggest pros of the new 12-inch MacBook is the design. The design of the new MacBook is a work of art. Put simply, this new MacBook is tiny, like really tiny. It's entirely made out of aluminum with its thickest point only being 13.1 millimeters. That's crazy thin. In contrast, both the MacBook Air and Pro are about 4 to 5 millimeters thicker. The new MacBook is also crazy light, weighing in at just over 2 pounds, with all other MacBook models far behind this, making the new 12-inch MacBook one of the thinnest and lightest laptops today. Pro number 2 of the new MacBook is the battery. Now the battery inside the new MacBook is stacked similar to the battery we see in the Moto X, meaning it can take up more room that would have otherwise been left empty. Now this doesn't mean that the new MacBook gets crazy battery life, but it should almost always make it through a full day of light usage. Now pro number 3 of the new MacBook is something we'll be seeing in all of Apple's new MacBooks, and that is the new Force Touch Trackpad. So this new MacBook has a pressure sensor inside that detects how much force you're applying to the trackpad, and essentially acts like a third click with tons of new features being added in OS X. This is something that's also in the Apple Watch and can be ingested in the settings based on how much pressure you want to initiate a forced touch. The new trackpad also has a taptic feedback engine that vibrates the trackpad when you press it to simulate a click, and so far I can't tell the difference between it and a normal trackpad. Pro number 4 of this new MacBook is something that no matter who you are and what you plan to do with this MacBook, you can enjoy, and that is the display. It's 12 inches with a resolution of 2304 by 1440, a bit of an odd resolution if you ask me, but nonetheless still good looking, and a 16 by 10 aspect ratio. So these have been the pros of the new 12-inch MacBook, but now let's take a look at the cons. Con number 1 of the new MacBook is that it only has one port. So the new MacBook relies on a single USB Type-C connector for charging, outputting to an external display, and data transfer with USB 3.1 speeds. Now don't get me wrong, I love USB Type-C and I'd love if it was in more devices, and it will be in more devices. I mean, we've already seen it in the Chromebook Pixel 2, and Google has hinted at it being in future devices, but as of right now, the amount of devices that work natively with USB Type-C is very limited, meaning you'll need an adapter to connect basically anything to this new MacBook, which kind of counteracts the whole portability thing Apple's got going on with this new MacBook, especially considering how much these adapters will run you if you want to buy them through Apple's store, which I highly recommend against. This also means if you want to connect anything to the MacBook, it means you'll have to run on battery power. Con number 2 on the new MacBook is the keyboard. Making a laptop so thin, Apple had to make some compromises, and the keyboard is one of those compromises. The keys are wider, but with a much shallower key travel distance that kind of ruins the whole typing experience for me on the new MacBook. Sometimes I would hit a key and feel absolutely nothing, leaving me wondering if I even pressed the key at all, and other times I would accidentally press the key and would have no idea of it since there was no tactile feedback. Overall, the keyboard on the new MacBook is pretty disappointing. Con number 3. The new MacBook has a 480p webcam. Now to you this might not be a big deal, but considering the fact that the iPhone has a 720p webcam, it bothers me a ton. All I've got to say is that the new MacBook webcam is garbage and it should have been more. Alright, so those are the pros and cons of the new 12-inch MacBook from Apple, but before I go, there's one thing we haven't taken a look at, and that is the power of the new MacBook, and I was saving this topic on purpose for the end of the video, because these specs to one person, more the average consumer, could be just fine, but to another, for a more professional person, could be a massive con. So I'm going to let you decide on this one. This is the power of the new 12-inch MacBook. The new MacBook is powered by a 5-watt Intel Core M CPU clocked at 1.1 GHz with Intel HD 5300 graphics and 8 GB of RAM, with your only upgrade options being more SSD storage and higher clock CPUs. These specs allow the new MacBook to have 0 cooling fans and be completely silent, with the drawback that the MacBook can get a little warm under intensive tasks, but for your everyday tasks and the occasional very light photo, video editing, and gaming, then these specs will work for you. But if you're someone who does a ton of intensive gaming and editing, then these specs won't cut it and you'll want to look elsewhere. So these have been my first impressions of the new MacBook. If you want to catch my hands-on and first impressions video of the Apple Watch that was just uploaded yesterday, I'll leave that link down below in the description. Also, be sure to let me know what you guys think of this new MacBook in the comments below. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.